Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Cheers to a healthy 2025. Just get through flu and RSV and norovirus season first. Dr. Scott Gottlieb weighs in.
We're seeing a lot of it right now. It's an unusual peak of that virus this time of the year.
And it's a big year for executive hires. Apple's got a new CFO. Disney's on the hunt for a new boss, with a little help from Morgan Stanley's James Gorman. Dartmouth professor Paul Argenti on succession IRL.
I think Bob Iger has well passed his sell-by date, if you ask me.
Plus, the latest on two concerning New Year's Day incidents in New Orleans and Las Vegas. And yes, we are still talking about New York's congestion pricing charge, now just days away.
If you don't live here, we're not really wasting your time. It could happen to you.
It's Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. Happy New Year. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen. Andrew is off today. Well, here we go. First trading day of the year, and things are off to a pretty strong start for the bulls. Now, that does come after 4 days in a row of declines before this. Stocks declined on Tuesday, which was the final day of the year, but they did lock in gains of 2024 of 12.8% for the Dow, 23.3% for the S&P 500, and 28.6% for the NASDAQ. In fact, for the NASDAQ, if you look at the last 2 years, those are the biggest back-to-back years of gains that we've seen since back to the late 90s, with watching some of the big run-ups there. This time it's AI that's fueling all of those things. Back then it was the dot-com issues. We'll continue to see how this plays out for this year, though.
Now to the tragic attack in New Orleans in the early hours of New Year's Day. At least 15 people now were killed and more than 30 injured when a man in a pickup truck intentionally drove into the crowd. The FBI identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsun Din Jabbar, a U.S. citizen who served in the Army for 10 years. The rented pickup truck was an electric vehicle, so
Ford electric.
Couldn't even hear it coming. Contained an Islamic State flag, an ISIS flag, weapons, and a potential explosive device. He opened fire on responding police officers who apparently just fearlessly ran right towards him. He wounded two, but he died in that gunfight. An FBI official, said that they believe the suspect was not acting alone, but haven't disclosed exactly what they're talking about as far as evidence of co-conspirators. The Sugar Bowl, which was the college football playoff quarterfinal game that a lot of people were looking forward to. It's going to happen today. Georgia versus Notre Dame was postponed until today over security concerns. I think it's going to be played like a mile from where all this happened. Right. So it just, for a lot of reasons, and it seems, well, and security and just in general, but and then I think most people thought, yeah, that's the way to do it. But you can imagine how disruptive it was for everybody, players, hotels, people with tickets, people with plans. It was
active on Bourbon Street when this
else
happened. I mean, this is the area down in the French Quarter.
Well, what if you were supposed to be back to work on Thursday and, going down there to watch the game, all the players, it's just bad. Probably, obviously it was some unbelievably tragic, extenuating circumstances,
yes.
which put us...
And a continuing concern about security in the area. There's a nationwide concern about
security.
Continuing
concern everywhere.
Everywhere, because of separately a second attack that took place. Mm-hmm. A Tesla Cybertruck exploding and bursting into flames yesterday morning. And this happened outside the entrance of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas, killing a person inside the vehicle and injuring several others that were standing nearby. It's being investigated as a possible terrorist attack. Police say that the bed of the truck contained gasoline tanks, camp fuel canisters, and large fireworks mortars. You saw this. You can see the explosions after place. Authorities say that they believe the explosion was an isolated incident, but they aren't ruling out a connection between that explosion and the attack that took place just hours earlier in New Orleans. Both of those trucks were rented through an app called Turo. That's a peer-to-peer car rental service, sort of an Airbnb for car rentals, where you are renting from people, and both of them took place on that app, and that's one of many reasons that they are looking at these very closely for any other potential connections.
Right. Doesn't mean anything necessarily. I don't think there's any indication of the same group of people, but using the same app. I mean, I've never used that to rent a car. New Jersey has asked a federal judge to block New York from moving forward with that congestion pricing plan in Manhattan that we've talked a lot. If you don't live here, we're not really wasting your time. It could happen to you. The request came late Tuesday, a day after the judge rejected most of New Jersey's challenge to the new toll, but ordered federal transportation officials to provide more information about their review and approval of the plan. It's unclear whether the judge will rule on New Jersey's request before the toll takes effect on Sunday. But not to worry. Use mass transit.
I thought the same thing when I was coming in this morning.
Use mass transit. It's not a big deal. It's
someone else got shoved onto the tracks.
About to be shoved, and don't worry about it.
Coming after the fire, the woman set on fire a week ago.
And they've already so they make no money. They've totally mismanaged mass transit in this city. So, and they've spent all this money already. This is almost like the raising the debt ceiling. They need the congestion pricing to make up for money that they've already blown not making all the mass transit safe, basically. Isn't that it? Mayor Adams, is he behind this? Is he happy about this?
I have not heard how he's weighed in on this. I mean, you would think if he was bothered by it, he would be more vocal about it.
You would think he would be bothered by it because it just makes it harder for everyone to get back the way it was before the pandemic. And there's still a lot of people that are here to serve all the people that come in from New Jersey.
The argument is if you
Not
want
serve,
people
but
coming back.
That's how they make their living.
Whether your lunches, your parking garage, selling lunches to people or parking garages or anything along all the services around it. If you want people to come back into the city for work, you probably shouldn't make it more expensive.
How much is it
to do
that you're going to?
It's $9 a day, but during surge pricing, it could go up to $13 or $14.
And what is the?
But that hasn't been decided yet.
And the tunnels and bridges are like $20.
I think the tolls are set to go up on those as well.
But are they 20 now?
I
15.
If you have Easy Pass and if you're going off peak, it's different prices for different hours. But yeah, if you want people to come back in, to go to work, to come in for entertainment, you probably should not make it more expensive to do so.
Okay, so it's worked other places, supposedly.
London is the one example that's cited again and again.
Okay.
We'll see. But again, they call it congestion pricing because they don't want as much traffic here. So their goal is to keep people off of keep them from driving themselves and put them on mass transportation.
Right. And that's the status of the mass. Or you can get on a bus where no one pays.
More than 50% of the people who are riding New York City buses today avoid the fares. Same thing. It's something like 30% for the subways.
Right.
Altice USA customers lost access to MSG networks yesterday because of a carriage dispute between the cable operator and James Dolan's regional sports channels. That means that the New York-based cable company's customers won't be able to watch the NBA's New York Knicks or the NHL's Rangers, Islanders, and New Jersey Devils. MSG said it offered fair and reasonable proposals and remains ready to negotiate in good faith. Altice called MSG's programming fees exorbitant and said that they would force it to raise cable bills.
Yeah.
You see these happen every once in a while. The pushback.
This time of year.
January 1st.
I don't know what. There's so many things to bet on that it's almost like overwhelming.
Oh, for the sports you're talking.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming.
Last night, Matt was flipping through sport to sport, going back and forth.
I mean, I think tomorrow, or Saturday, Bengals are actually going to be televised again. So there's all these NFL games. There's all these, there's 12 teams now.
The college teams.
And then you got college basketball in full swing, and NBA.
And the NHL. Yeah.
So many ways to lose money. I got so many different ways to lose money on DraftKings. I can't pick. Actually, I had Ohio State big yesterday.
Did you?
Good
for you.
And the over. And I had Arizona State because they were
that was exciting. Maybe before Oregon.
It was.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, America's Health with Dr. Scott Gottlieb.
As much as there's angst in dealing with your health insurer, imagine trying to deal with the federal government on these things. So the government basically outsources this to the private health plans.
And wash your hands. Norovirus is on the rise, and so is flu and RSV. How to stay healthy out there in 2025? Up next. This is Squawk Pod.
Stand by, Joe. His mic, cue.
Watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernen along with Becky. Quick, Andrew's off today, Thursday.
I know, it's not Monday.
Thursday. I just have to keep telling myself that. Yep.
Well, if you don't already know it, and maybe you do in your household, we are in the thick of flu, COVID, and RSV season. Joining us right now with this and much more is former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He is now a Pfizer and Illumina board member, also a CNBC contributor. And Scott, let's talk through where things stand. A lot of people probably realize this. They've gotten through the holidays and maybe have had some sickness that have come through their households. How bad is it on a national level?
Well, if you look historically relative to past years, it's not that bad right now. We're probably in the peak season right now with flu and RSV and COVID as well. So we'll probably peak over the next several weeks. Right now, about 5% of all visits to emergency departments are for influenza-like illness. It's higher among kids, so it's as high as 13% for kids age 0 to 4. But overall, it's about 5%. We'll probably continue to go up for the next week or two and then hopefully start to come down with flu A and with RSV as well. The RSV season was a little bit late this year.
So it's maybe just kind of all colliding at the same time because of the later RSV season, too?
Yeah, it's a confluence of things. And RSV usually hits earlier. It's hitting a little later. COVID's starting to peak around the same time. So I think there's a sense that there's a lot of coughs and sniffles around right now, and there are, because all three of those, epidemics are converging.
What about norovirus? I feel like I know some people who have come across with that.
I almost sent you an article that said it was the worst year ever for stomach-borne on cruises. She's got this.
No, I'm not going on a cruise.
I know, but it was the worst year ever. And I thought about you because I would send you some, 15% off.
I don't take cruises, and that's a big part of the reason why.
Yeah,
actually, it's only part of the reason.
We just dealt with this in my household. My 11-year-old had norovirus for 24 hours. So it's 24 to 48 hours. It's spread fecal oral, so people who don't wash their hands in restaurants or don't take good care.
Those two words shouldn't go together, ever.
Not right for breakfast, but, this can spread within a household if you're not careful. It's very easy to spread within a household as well.
Highly contagious.
Right, and it can be very bad. You can have severe vomiting and diarrhea over a 24 to 48-hour period. So if you can't keep fluids down for that length of time, you can get into trouble very quickly if you're older or younger. So it can be severe. We're seeing a lot of it right now. It's an unusual peak of that virus this time of the year. So there's a lot of it.
You know what? I did read. I was reading up about it. It can't be killed by using those hand sanitizers.
That's right.
You've got to wash your hands, wash them really well for at least 20 seconds, and maybe people should think about that too.
And it can live on surfaces for a while.
Well, don't pee on your hand. I have like three really.
It's not pee.
It's not pee. It's poop.
Well, okay. I got three really sensational type things to talk about with you. Can I ask you about these? Is the for-profit model still what we should use for healthcare after?
Good question.
Because it's a legitimate question because the fire department doesn't try to make money. I still think that for-profit, it does make you mind your P's and Q's, but it does seem to cause people to pull back care that's necessary in certain. I'm talking about the whole United Healthcare.
Yeah, well, look,
how should we fix this, Scott?
When you think about companies like the for-profit health insurers, what they're really doing is implementing plans on behalf of the government and on behalf of employers. So people who don't like the benefit structure, the prior authorization, what they're doing is implementing constraints that are being imposed by the contracts that they have, either with the government agencies like Medicare Advantage or with self-employed businesses that are contracted with them to administer the benefits. So it's really the benefit structure that people are entering into that's imposing those.
Yes and no. Was it just the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times that laid out this huge investigative story taking a look at how sometimes United Health in particular is the one they focused on, but there were doctors involved who were, and the setup for the doctors involved in their own healthcare was they had to go through this checklist, and it was set up to try and get you to say that these are that your patient has some really crazy diagnosis before you even saw them. And these happen to be the ones that Medicare paid out the most for.
Yeah, look, the tactics people can take issue with in terms of how the employers are trying to impose cost constraints, but they're imposing those cost constraints on behalf of consumers for the contracts, for the companies they're contracting with.
But so, United Health's profit margins are based around the idea of how much more they can bilk out of things.
Yeah, look, and I'm not trying to defend United Healthcare. Their profit margins are slim. I can tell you when I worked at the Medicare agency, so I worked at CMS, and we were implementing the Medicare Advantage plan, we looked at the for-profit health insurers as the entity that was going to impose the cost constraints so that we didn't have to do it in the government. The alternative is to have government agencies administering these rules and imposing these constraints.
Yeah.
That's going to be more remote from the consumer. I mean, as much as there's angst in dealing with your health insurer, imagine trying to deal with the federal government on these things.
Yeah.
So the government basically outsources this to the private health plans. If you take it back from the private health plans, someone is going to have to impose that cost constraint and implement measures to do that. It's either going to be these for-profit companies or the government. I think properly regulated, this is the right model. We can quibble with whether or not they're being properly regulated and they're doing things that are excessive.
And everything's related. So, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., certain things are very controversial, but lifestyle issues and food and obesity in this country, if we could get a grip on that, I think the costs would immediately be more manageable.
Yeah, look,
is he a person who could be effective in that role? I mean, do you think he's going to?
You weren't here when Scott came on to talk about his thoughts on RFK Jr. earlier.
I haven't seen him articulate a policy plan for how to actually implement his aspirations. I can tell you, when I was at FDA, we implemented the calorie counts on menu labels that are now, when you go into a restaurant, you see the calories. We implemented the regulations.
I love them. I want to know what I'm
they
eating.
let you give more choice. We implemented a regulation.
I can't order anything, thanks to you.
To try to reduce salt in the food. Those were extremely controversial moves. I faced a lot of backlash from conservatives mostly who felt that they were nanny state type politics.
Yeah.
You know, RFK's talking about firing the nutrition staff at FDA, and he talks about the corruption at the FDA. If you wanted to if you were serious about implementing more regulation on food to try to reduce additives that probably aren't helpful.
He wouldn't be good, and you don't want him to,
well, you'd be beefing up that staff. You'd be beefing up the nutrition staff.
Do you think he doesn't get okay?
Well, you'd give them more regulatory tools over food ingredients. That's not what they're talking about. So I worry that they're aspirational. They're not talking about how to actually implement these things in policy.
He had come on before when you weren't here and raised his concerns about some of the other issues there. Kimberly Strassel at the Wall Street Journal has written in her piece on why she's opposed to some of the policies, too. I don't know if you want to
Well, look, my concern when we spoke was around the vaccine policies, not around what he's trying to do on food. I think what he's trying to do on food, at least at an aspirational level, can provide a lot of public health benefit. What I worry about is I don't see them articulating how they're going to implement that as a matter of policy, other than some things that are more talk pointy. I'm very concerned that they are deadly serious about trying to reduce vaccination rates in this country around the childhood immunization schedule, measles, mumps, and rubella, and pertussis. They can disband ACIP, the advisory committee to the CDC. They can make it harder to take the money for the Vaccine for Children's Fund. There's a lot of things they can do day one that could dramatically lower rates of vaccination for children. That's what I worry about. That's my concern.
Do pharmaceutical companies advertising, and it drives me nuts. And, I love nightly news, go Lester. But if you were to get rid of advertising for pharmaceuticals, I don't know where the advertising would come from, but is it really productive? Someone saying it causes people to look at things that they might not otherwise ask their doctor about. I think that's crap.
Well, I said that
I
too.
want the purple pill, and I don't even know what it does. They've got me wanting the purple pill. Why do I want the purple pill? What's it do? Do you know the purple pill?
Well, look, two domains, right? At a business level, it will reduce revenues from the company standpoint. But from a public health standpoint, we've looked at this when I was at FDA many times because this has been controversial. The ads do drive people into the doctor's office with specific complaints, with self-recognition.
Hypochondriacs. They should be using it on research and innovation, Scott. I'm inundated. Do you want me to sing the Ozempic song? Do you want me to sing the Jardian song?
Yes.
Jardian, these people, all these overweight people are like getting together and marching down the street and looking at each other. What is that BS?
There is a net public health benefit from the help-seeking behavior that people engage in.
Oh, listen to you.
No, it's true. That we are going to debate whether or not that's powerful enough to justify the advertising.
All that money.
But it's going to be very hard for them to regulate those advertising.
I used to love the pharmaceutical company. Now I'm starting to wonder. I have my doubts.
It's constitutionally protected speech, the advertising. So it's going to be hard to say the companies can't do it.
No, I'm not saying they can't. But as a shareholder, why don't you spend it more effectively instead of trying to talk people into?
Should shareholders push that, or should the government say you can't?
Not the government. No, shareholders.
Well, look, from a shareholder standpoint, it drives revenue. That revenue goes back into R&D. So there is a business intent here. There's no question about that. But if you look aside at the public health implications, it does get more people diagnosed, notwithstanding the fact that it imposes a lot of burdens on physicians who have patients coming in asking for things by name that sometimes they have to dissuade them about because they're not properly indicated.
Have you seen the
for it.
stomach dancing around? You know, stomach is a gross-looking thing. Have you seen it? It's a stomach dancing around, singing.
I haven't seen that one.
Huh? Not as gross as the poop in the box one. That's
Scott, stop.
But we didn't even get to bird flu. Every time you're here, we have more questions than you can field, only because they're running.
Bird flu is not happening.
It's not a problem,
it?
right?
It's not circulating right now. So we have a very good system in this country for sequencing strains of flu, people who get diagnosed. We've sequenced upwards of 75,000 people already this season. If it was circulating, we would have detected it. This isn't like COVID where it's circulating quietly and we're not picking it up. That said, most people believe this likely isn't going to be an event, but if it does become an event, we're not well prepared for it. We've done just about everything wrong to try to prepare for this, including not stockpiling the full armamentarium of antiviral drugs that we would need. You'd probably need Xofluza, maybe amantadine. We've only stockpiled Tamiflu, and if you look at the cases that were reported 2 days ago in the New England Journal of Medicine, patients who got very sick, just a handful of patients who got very sick where this got into the lower airway, the virus managed to mutate around Tamiflu. So you do worry that we don't have the drugs that we need on hand if, in the unlikely event, this does break out. And again, very unlikely, but a low probability, potentially high impact event that we should be preparing for.
Scott, thank you. Dr. Gottlieb, we'll have you back soon.
Up next on Squawk Pod, new year, new boss, changes sweeping the C-suite, who stays and who goes at Disney, Morgan Stanley, and at Apple, where CEO Tim Cook is coming up on 14 years at the helm. Tuck School of Business professor Paul Argenti joins us.
I'm sure they have a succession plan, and if they don't, the board is not doing its job properly. But I don't see the CFO choice as the one that is going to be the next CEO.
You're listening to Squawk Pod, today with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. Here's Joe.
We are tracking some leadership changes at top companies as 2025 kicks off. Among the highlights, James Gorman becoming Disney chairman and Ted Pick succeeding Gorman as chairman of Morgan Stanley. He's already CEO. And then Gorman is leaving to become chairman of Disney to help find someone for Bob Iger. So it's very weird. Apple's getting a new CFO. Charles Schwab is changing its CEO. We had the guy in, Rick Wurster, remember, join us to talk about these moves, as well as Amazon calling corporate workers back to the office for 5 days a week. Paul Argenti is professor of corporate communications at Dartmouth, Tuck School of Business. Before we talk about the individual, and Professor, it's good to see you. Before we talk about the individual instances we talked about, what's the big trend going to be? 5 days? Oh, is it ever possible we go to 4 days? I'm asking for a friend.
I think so. I mean, I think that could happen. I can't imagine 5 days for everyone into the deep future. It just doesn't seem like that's possible anymore, especially the younger generations really value their time. And there seems to be no loss in productivity. I don't understand some of the moves by companies like AT&T or Amazon to try to bring people back for 5 days. That seems like time gone by, really. It doesn't mean people aren't working. They're just working from home and trying to capture some time for themselves and work at their own pace, which is what most people want in life.
So it's the young people that are sort of trying to appreciate their time. That's all they have is time. Why? The old people, the ones that don't have much time left, we don't care about working 5 days. And everybody's got to come back to work so we can all get bird flu and then all go back home again, I think, Paul. Doesn't that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense to me. I hope that doesn't happen, to tell you the truth.
I hope it doesn't either.
I think, it's interesting because even during COVID, I went to work every day. We had access to our office, and I just feel comfortable in my office working on a regular basis. But I think younger people have figured out a way to balance work and their home life. And with young children around, it makes a lot of sense to give people that freedom. And honestly, I don't see any loss in productivity in the companies that I've worked with and for. And they just ought to try to figure out a 3 or 4 day work week. And even 1 day at home seems to work for people very, very well. So nice that can't go back to 5.
Yeah, I got grief last week for complaining about getting up at 3:30. I would love another just to sleep in is such a beautiful thing occasionally, Paul. So Ted Gorman, James Gorman leaves Morgan Stanley to become chairman at Disney just so he can help Disney find someone to replace Bob Iger. Yeah,
much needed, by the way. I think Bob Iger has well past his sell-by date, if you ask me. And Gorman, obviously is a great leader. He did an incredible job with the Smith-Barney deal and really turned that company around. And I trust his judgment a lot. That is a great choice for them and an opportunity to really find the right person, which they have not been able to do before. And they're leaving Morgan Stanley in good hands with Pick. He's already the CEO, so it's not like there's going to be a huge loss there. But he's a really seasoned guy who I think can get the job done. And he's already, on the board and everything there. That's a great choice.
Make a point about Apple that the new CFO, as he approaches 65, is Apple really going to start? 65 seems like so, 1900. That's not the time when people leave anymore. That would mean Tim Cook's is going to need to have a successor eventually too. Is that happening?
I mean, it has to happen. I don't think Parekh is the guy who's going to succeed him. I mean, I don't know that I would pick a CFO for that job. But yeah, he's getting long in the tooth too, right? I mean, he's been there for a very long time, and I'm sure they have a succession plan. And if they don't, the board is not doing its job properly. But I don't see the CFO choice as the one that is going to be the next CEO. I could be wrong. I also, have for many years thought Apple has got to start a decline of some sort, but now you see, they have this whole thing in China going on where they're having lower price points. They seem to be on a roll again globally. So at least from a CFO perspective, Parekh is a good choice, solid guy, did the financial planning. But I don't see any movement on the CEO job right now. I could be wrong, but I don't see that.
Just back to Disney for a second, finally. Is any media company going to be easy to manage in 2025, 2026, 2027? I don't. It's like Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson's going to stay Speaker of the House because no one else wants it.
Yeah, media is a tough industry to be in. But I think they found that right balance. Particularly at Disney, with they still have theme parks, plus they have an incredible franchise with movies. That they seem to have gotten it more right than most. Let's put it that way. And yeah, I think these media companies have kind of figured out a way around some of the problems that were true 10, 15 years ago. So I do see the balance coming in, particularly for Disney. They're in a great shape compared to some of the other companies with the balance of things that they have. I mean, you look at some of the other companies and wonder how they're going to succeed, but not Disney. And, they just need the right CEO, which, Iger, to me, is not the right guy. They need somebody new.
Okay. All right, Paul. Good to have you on this morning. Thank you.
Good to see you.
That's Squawk Pod for today, our first episode of 2025. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.